I just want to say at the start here that this video is just on how to not be bad, man, because you would not believe how hard it is to not be bad in this game. You would think that to just not be bad, like not even be good, just not be bad would be easy, but it's not. There is so much misinformation out there. It's insane. The very first thing we're going to look at the warrior opener. Do openers even matter? Just hit your buttons. You're half right. You need to hit your buttons, but you need to hit the right buttons in the right order. There are literally 2 different openers you can use, but I'm just going to tell you this one because this is the one I use in every single fucking fight. So this is the opener I use every single fight. The only thing that I change outside of this opener is if I start with Tomahawk or not. Now, you can pot right here, which is when I do, or you can pot right here, which is what I used to do, but I haven't done this in a long time. So I normally pot right here, but the reason why you would want to pot right here is because of your ping. If your ping is like super bad, you want to pot here, or if you're forced away from the boss, you want to pot here. And the reason why you want to pot here is because it gives you an extra GCD window to use your final fell cleave. If you use it right here, this pot will catch the Storm's Eye, and it will also catch the very last fell cleave, which is right here. These last 3 are not really a part of the opener. I mean, they kind of are, but your pot actually falls off right here. So the opener is pretty standard, man. It's really standard. The only time that you would change it, well, pretty much is if you cut this out because you want to start with heavy swing, which is definitely a possibility. And if that's the case, then you just move Infuriate right there. It's not really a big change. The basic warrior gameplay is pretty easy. You just want to keep this up as much as possible. There are times when dropping this is actually a DPS increase. I'm not going to go too into that because it's like few and far between. But basically, when your eye will just drop for 1 GCD, it's better to do Storm's Path because the beast gauge you get is going to be worth more potency than this. But that's only for 1 GCD. I'm not going to go too much into optimizations at this point because, like I said, this is not meant to be a guide. This is meant for just basic rules to not be bad. What is path greeting? Path greeting is when you have a choice. This duration right here. When you have like 7 seconds left on eye and you're at your last hit on your combo. So now you have a choice. You can either hit Storm's Path and get 20 extra rage, or you can refresh your Storm's Eye. Path greeting is when you do this. Now watch the timer here, okay? Now look how this falls off. I reapply it, okay? Now sometimes this is good. Sometimes it is a damage increase to actually drop this. I'm not gonna go into that too much because honestly, by the time that you play this job and you play long enough, the fucking expansion is gonna be out. The basic concept of warrior is literally, man, just don't overcap. Now, what do I mean by overcap? I mean this. Maim gives you 20 gauge. Storm's Eye gives you 10 gauge, and it also gives you Storm's Eye buff, which is 10% damage. Storm's Path gives you 20 gauge. Okay, so I have 100. So that means if I hit one of these abilities, I'm gonna overcap. Okay, so I overcapped, so that's bad. You never wanna overcap. Now, in some situations, you will use Onslaught. You use this mostly to save yourself a GCD. You don't really use that. Like, you used to be able to optimize with this. Like, you used to be able to manipulate your rage to a certain extent, but they kind of took all that out. Onslaught, a lot of people don't like this cooldown, but I actually think this is the best gap closer in the game. And the reason why I do is because it activates the fastest, it has the longest range, and you don't have to fucking spam it. I am not a fan of spamming gap closers. I think that that's stupid. I think that there should be absolutely no potency on a gap closer. They removed potency from Reprisal. I don't know why they copy pasted Pepega Plunge onto every fucking tank. That doesn't make sense to me. Basically, Onslaught is my favorite because it activates the fastest and it's always ready. You could argue that it's always ready for the other tanks, but sometimes you have to save it and it becomes awkward for no reason. And I say no reason because there shouldn't even be potency on that anyway, but that's another thing. But more or less, Warrior is very, very simple. All you do is you just keep this buff up. That's it. When you don't need to use Storm's Eye, you just use Storm's Path. It's just that easy, man. It's just that easy. While you're doing Storm's Eye and Storm's Path, you just use Fell Cleave in between. You have 2 choices how to spend your rage. You have Upheaval and you have Fell Cleave. Upheaval will always take priority over Fell Cleave. Upheaval is more damage than Fell Cleave. Every time. Not just once, it's every time. Now I know what you're thinking. How can Upheaval be more damage when it's 450 and Fell Cleave is 590? Because Upheaval is off GCD. Also, you want to keep Upheaval lined up within a release. Warrior's job is converting rage into potency. And for 20 rage, you get 450 potency and off the GCD versus Felcleave, which is 590 potency at 50 rage. So basically, Upheaval completely shits all over Felcleave in terms of damage. So you always prioritize Upheaval over Felcleave. You want to use Upheaval on cooldown. If you don't use Upheaval on cooldown, it'll get fucked up. Let's say inner release is like 18 seconds or something like that, like 18 seconds, then you want to use Upheaval. If it's like 17 or less, then you don't. I say that, but at the same time, there are cases when it's okay to use it. But as a general rule, I would say if your inner release is like, I don't know, 16, 17 seconds, don't use Upheaval. Here's another thing. Watch. So I use my Upheaval, right? Now, you don't have to wait to use inner release until this is off cooldown. Okay, you can literally hit this at 9 seconds. If you use your Upheaval, you can hit this like now. Because inner release is 10 seconds. So you're still gonna get this free Upheaval in. It's just gonna be at the end. See, I got it in fine, it's fine. It just becomes tricky when it's like 16 or less because it depends on a fight it's like case by case basis. Basically what I'm saying is you don't have to wait to use inner release until this is completely off cooldown. As long as you use your inner release when your Upheaval is at like 9 seconds, you're fine because you're going to be able to get it in. I would say just common general rules, refresh your eye 7 seconds or higher. If your Storm's Eye is like 7 seconds or less, just refresh it. If the boss is going to go away, refresh it, because depending on how long the boss is away, like let's say the boss is away for like 30 seconds or like 25 seconds. Okay, well, you're probably going to need an entire refresh plus an extra like 5 seconds just to keep it. Is refreshing whenever it drops below 30 seconds stupid? I think stupid is the wrong way to describe it. I think it's unneeded in a lot of cases. I'm not going to tell you it is, and I'm not going to tell you it's not, because neither one is correct. The correct answer is it just depends. Here is a big thing that you should never do, okay? Never do this, okay? I'm going to do this, so shield your eyes. Never do this. Never hit Infuriate and then hit inner release, okay? Never. You do not hit Infuriate at the same time you have inner release going. You never do it. Ever. Never and ever. I'm going to explain why you never do that, because I see people doing this. The reason why you never do this, when you hit Infuriate, it turns your Felcleave into Inner Chaos, okay? So when you hit that, it gives you this. This buff will almost never matter. The fact that it gives you a buff here is kind of dumb. It almost never matters. The only time this buff matters is when you're trying to optimize with your second potion, when you want to try to get in 3 Inner Chaos. But this ability auto crit direct hits. Auto crit direct hit every single time. So inner release will make all of your attacks auto crit direct hit. So if you use Infuriate underneath inner release, you literally just waste an entire GCD. When you get Inner Chaos, the job changes. When you get this fucking god-awful ability that for some reason everyone fucking loves, that is horrible. I think if you like Inner Chaos, you don't understand how bad this move is. Like, you don't understand how horrible this move is for Warrior. The only thing you see that 920 crit direct hit and your PP gets a little hard. That's what happens. This is not big dick damage, by the way. This 58k, that's not big dick damage, okay? So keep this in mind, okay? Paladins can crit a Confiteor for over 100,000. So when you're doing your little baby dick, 90k, 95k, fuck yeah, man mode, Inner Chaos, the pussy tank with the shield is dealing more damage than you. The white mage that does misery is shitting all over your big dick 920 potency move, okay? So maybe the next time you think, oh man, Inner Chaos is so strong, maybe you should think about a crit direct hit Confiteor or a crit direct hit misery, because that's exactly what you're going to be going through, is misery. Warrior DPS is pretty standard, man, honestly. If you want to just simply not be bad, all you have to do is keep Storm's Eye up and use Path when you don't need Storm's Eye. That's literally it. And use this on cooldown. Use Upheaval on cooldown. Upheaval will drift, and what does it mean to drift? This is what it means to drift. So I use Upheaval as a first off GCD here, okay? So when this comes around again, it's going to be a little bit slower in my GCD, meaning that it's going to be closer to being a secondary off GCD than a first off GCD. So basically, as you do this and you go through your rotation, so like right here, It's going to come off cooldown as a secondary. See that? I almost clipped. Okay? So that's what drift is. That's what drift is. And it's going to happen. It happens on all like 30 seconds. It's common. It's normal. You don't want to use inner release unless this is at like 45 seconds or like higher to be on the safe side. What's going to happen if you do is because each fell cleave minuses 5 seconds on your Infuriate, you're going to run into an issue where this is off cooldown. So you have 2 charges, but you have 2 more fell cleaves to do. So that's 10 seconds that's wasted. So that's pretty significant. Basically, before you use inner release, you want to check, do I have Storm's Eye? Yes. What's my Infuriate timer? Is it like 45 seconds or less? Then maybe I should just do this just to be safe. Basic rules, keep Storm's Eye up. If Storm's Eye is 9 seconds or less, refresh it. If the boss is going to jump away, refresh it. Use Path when you're not using Storm's Eye. For inner release, never use Infuriate during inner release. I would use an Infuriate before inner release. You don't want to overcap on Infuriate, and you don't want to overcap on your beast gauge. Think of Infuriate like another gauge. You always prioritize an Upheaval over a fell cleave. And the reason why you do is because Upheaval, like we talked about earlier, it just does so much more damage, man. It does so much more damage. This is my favorite gap closer in the game because it's always up when you need it. It activates super fast and it's the longest. Okay, yo, you want the dungeon guide? Here's the dungeon guide. When you're doing a dungeon run, let's say you start at A, and let's say that the first boss is at B. But there is a group of mobs here, there's a group of mobs there, and there's a group of mobs there. Do you know what you do? Okay, ready? Go. You go. You get this group of fucking mobs. Overpower. You get this fucking group of mobs. Overpower. You get this fucking group of mobs. Overpower. And then you fight at the wall and you blow all your cooldowns and then you kill them all, okay? That's what you do. That's the end of the guide. All right, that's the end of the guide. All right, I didn't mention Storm's Eye. Here's a little bit of advanced. You can hit one of the mobs, then you hit another, then you hit another and put on Storm's Eye, and then you can put on Overpower and all that shit. But I didn't want to overwhelm you, so I didn't mention Storm's Eye, okay? Because for some fucking reason, man, there's this big taboo on pulling wall to wall. You know, these motherfuckers that think that it's so hard to pull wall to wall, it's like they don't have their cooldowns on their hotbar. It's like they've never actually ran any type of content besides a dungeon. That should just be standard, pulling wall to wall. That should just be fucking standard. It's literally impossible to die. Dungeons in this game are stupid fucking easy. If you need a guide for a dungeon, I cannot help you. There's nothing I can say that'll help you. You're just, if you need a guide for a dungeon, you're just bad. I'm sorry. It is what it is. The dungeons in this game are that easy.